Hi, this is a sign language interpreter for this session. My name's John.
Hello, John. I'm Sarah Ann. I'm the tech for today, for this session.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
And is it Joan and Cinda?
Hi, I'm Sid, I'm going to be your room moderator.
Awesome. I'm going to turn my video off, but I am going to be here the whole time monitoring chat and listening to you.
Morning, Andrew.
Morning.
It looks like we actually have about 15 minutes before the session starts. Is that right with everybody?
Sounds right.
So we have 15 minutes. We can go away and go do something. I mean, go away.
If you would like to. Sure. Just come back, please.
To catch up on. So I'm just going to shrink this and I'll be back.
All right.
So you think 15 minutes?
It's supposed to start at 1:15. Well, my time.
Okay.
So 2:15.
Thank you.
Joan isn't on yet, is she? I don't see her.
No, I haven't seen Joan.
Okay.
For some reason, her name is showing up in my screen, but I'm not exactly sure why.
I saw that. You don't look like Joan.
No,
You could rename yourself. If you click the 3 dots on the top right, I believe, of your screen, there should be an option to rename.
Yep. Thank you.
No problem.
There we go. I've regained my identity.
You look better as a David.
Thank you. Thank you.
It just kind of fits.
I remember years ago, I had my identity stolen, credit card identity stolen. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
couldn't figure out why anybody would want to be me. But
Hey guys, this is Peter Pike. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi,
good morning,
Peter.
Hey, just we're trying to manage some technical difficulties here. So we're able to see everybody and hear everybody, but you guys are unable to see us and hear us. And I logged in under my own link that I received. And I think, David, you might have logged in using Joan's. That's why Joan's name came up. And I don't know if that would be a conflict or if we all need to have.
It shouldn't be a problem.
I don't know. I just clicked, the email that I got that gave me the instructions on how to join. I just clicked on that. So that's how I joined.
Don't worry, David. It's not something you did wrong. It's just a technical thing that's happened in Zoom for me several times. That
Gotcha.
you enter either as like a panelist or that you get like a proper invite that would have given you your own name. So it was a Zoom error, not yours.
Okay. Well, I changed my name there. So, but yes, thank you.
You're looking good. Thanks, David. So what do you recommend to the folks in the Zoom room how to connect? Can we use the link that Joan received?
Yes, that would make everyone's name be hers, but that shouldn't cause any other technical problems.
So you need to, hold on.
Okay, so this is Brian with Disabled Resource
You can
Services.
put video
Let me just turn video on real quick. So we're in a Zoom room and we can't click the link through the Zoom room. We can only enter the meeting ID number, but it's not prompting us for our passcode to enter as a panelist.
Okay, so I don't know why it's not prompting you, but if I knew that you had entered as an attendee but were a panelist, I can just promote you.
Okay, so let me log in with the panel and then that one that enters is gonna be us.
If you raise your hand, then I'll know that that's you.
Okay, I'll do that.
No.
If we get promoted,
You're getting promoted. So you're kind of like in the waiting room or something. Probably. What's that? It's a separate Zoom link. Here we go, here we go. No, I'm gonna take the audio. See.
Oh, here we are.
I'm sure you'll fix it. There's a little bit of echo, so you're probably logged in twice. Okay, I think the conference room might be trying to talk to us, but we didn't actually hear anything.
Can you hear us?
we were talking amongst ourselves. Can you hear us now?
We can, perfect.
Perfect.
But the camera's not the same way it was because we were closer. Patricia's not gonna be able to see us. And we're gonna need the lights on. Both? At least this one.
So we're just doing a video check. We want to make sure that the people are close enough in the Zoom room to ensure if you need to see people's faces that you can do that.
Look at the camera.
That would be ideal in case anyone's using like Library.
Yes.
And you don't have everybody in that one. And it was all set.
That's the pre-setting we had.
But
So unless the
they're not-
tables have moved, then the camera's not changed.
But we were much closer.
It's just because the picture's smaller, so we look smaller.
Patricia, can you see us okay?
Yeah.
To
well,
read
I
our
mean,
lips?
You're far away. You're pretty far away. I don't see your face
And we're
very
not
well at all.
really,
You want to move the tables closer?
Or is there a
No,
way
we
to
can't.
zoom us in?
So I'm gonna think we're gonna.
No pun
zoom in,
intended.
No pun intended.
Good.
And we're gonna have to pan.
So to speak.
All those settings are,
There's a captioner.
tables
so-
are in the wrong place, and we're gonna be winging it as we're starting.
There's a
Should we
captioner.
zoom in, so to speak?
If we try and change our camera settings now, we're gonna
Don't do
be
it.
into the panel time.
But Leo is gonna be out of the panel.
There is
No,
one
no,
thing, guys,
Okay.
I just want to
We're
mention your box is extra small right now because we have 6 people's cameras on. But once you get started, 2 cameras are going to be removed and 4, so your box
Okay.
will get bigger.
Sorry. Okay,
Exactly.
okay.
Good to know.
I didn't get that. Can somebody say that again?
Yes, I can't fix the camera zoom, but the box itself that's showing the picture is going to get bigger at 11:15 because people like Sidna, the room monitor, her box will go away, and so yours will get bigger.
And you know, we have captioning, so it's not going to be such a
John,
big.
I have a request.
What?
Give the question to someone.
Can't find them easily.
And we're all to
Okay.
turn off our cameras unless we're talking, right?
Yes.
You could just email it
I'm trying to find.
to Ian, you have.
So Joan, do you want to do questions and answers as we go, or do you want to wait till the end?
So how we planned this one, that's why we did a run through with Sierra. So I thought maybe you had heard this, but so I know you're going to introduce the session and it's going to, then you're going to kind of segue it to me. And then
You disappeared.
We disappeared.
I didn't
Now
see
you're-
the camera changes here.
What's
Okay,
that?
back to what you were saying. The voice cut out. It just stopped with audio.
Okay. So you're going to introduce the session as I understand it, and then send it over to me. I'm going to give a really brief overview of what we're hoping to accomplish.
Okay.
And then Peter is going to introduce the panelists. And then we're going to go into the 4 questions. And then at the end of the whole questions, there's 4 questions. That's when we're going to open it up to participants to say their own generation and answer any of the questions they wanted of the 4 questions.
Okay.
So, and that's how we're going to go. And then you'll give the 5-minute warning and we'll go until the 5-minute warning and then let you take over.
All righty. Well, I show that we've got 5 minutes until the session starts. And we're going to have a Great Dane join us too.
Food. Oh. Did you find it? Because I have a backup plan. There's all this stuff about food.
We're very
Zoom, come here.
My
Zoom.
password
Zoom,
expired.
Little boy. Oh, boy. Okay. We got a German Shepherd here in this room. Hey, Mary.
Stop that real.
That's right.
Okay, sort of an outline or presentation. April conference presentation.
You couldn't think of this 2 hours ago.
I was thinking, I
I'm
could just
sorry.
log
Here.
in.
You guys want the answer?
The questions.
I got them. You want them?
Yeah, email them.
You don't need them? You emailing them?
Yeah, I can email them.
Perfect.
We focus more on the food here than.
No, I can't even find anything except the food. Oh, here they are.
I just sent them.
Yeah, I'm all right.
What's the date of the email that you got?
I got it September 30th.
Yep.
September 30th.
He just sent them to you, Peter.
I know, but I've also learned that sometimes it takes an email
It's
a
titled,
long time to
it's
get
titled
to.
sort of an outline of
Oh.
presentation.
Yep.
Perfect. Got it.
But do you see where the camera is? So that's where you have to be in front of it, that top part, not the little where the green button is. There you
Yeah.
go. But I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, wait, is this the camera or this?
That is
How does that look?
2 fingers. Yeah. That's his signal. One of them. Don't be. They're not impressed.
So Leo, you didn't get to participate in the practice
I
last
did
week,
not, no.
but you'll have 90 seconds for your response to any question. What's that?
Okay. The interpreter's interpreting him, and it's good practice.
Is that bad?
There's.
I've already talked to him.
We're prepared. Andrew, how you
You'll
doing?
get a 20-second warning.
Andrew, you doing good?
20 seconds.
I'm doing good. I'm
All right,
just waiting.
feeling all right? You ready for the panel?
Hopefully
Well, you're
hopefully I don't stumble. I got my notes and I got my bio and I got basically all I need, the answers to the questions. Oh, my answers.
yeah, you're looking sharp, man. You're looking sharp and confident to me.
Making us all look bad out here.
It's a should, I promise you.
Looking
I am
kinda-
not confident on the inside. I'm
I
hoping.
tried to play the part, but
I'm hoping I please the audience.
oh, you're gonna do great. It's pretty casual. You got a lot of support here.
And across the nation. We're all pretty good about that.
Hey, Andrew, we're all faking it, so no worries.
Yeah.
May I show 2
I guess
minutes? Sorry, 2 minutes until the session starts.
Don't we new people? Okay, everybody. Stretch.
Didn't you see what they were doing before some of the debates?
See, this
One
is
of them,
why
I
I
think it was
colored.
with Chris Wallace. He was like, before the debate, they had started early or something. And they had him like he was doing, and he was doing
Oh.
different exercises.
I don't think you guys want, I'm glad you didn't see that.
About 80 people here. Nice. Andrew, you didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, proud of you, Andrew, for doing this. I know this is kind of stepping out of your comfort zone from your normal job, and this is what it's all about. So it's good that you're stepping up.
I don't really have a normal job as of now because of COVID, but but yeah, I get it. This is a little bit outside of my comfort zone. So let's hope it all goes good and I don't faint on camera. Because that's not cute.
But you'll do great.
We're live, so we might want to stop. Yeah.
Alrighty, so we are going to go ahead and kick this off. I've got a few things to say and a little bit of housekeeping. I want to say welcome to everybody. My name is Sidna Madden. I am currently the treasurer for April, serving on the April board, and I'm going to be your facilitator for today. Thank you for joining us for the IL Among the Generations workshop. I want to mention a few housekeeping items before we get started today. First, when you scroll over the screen, a menu bar will pop up. And depending on what device you are on, you can find that menu bar either at the top of your screen or it'll appear at the bottom of your screen. But this is where you're going to find the closed captioning for today's session. You can view the captioning by selecting the CC tab on that menu bar. For sign language interpreting, you can find the interpreter on the main screen. If you do not see the interpreter, make sure that you are in gallery view. That will allow you to see more than one person at a time. To join into the chat, please find the word bubble on that same menu bar, again, either at the top or the bottom of your screen. Once that is selected, it will allow you to follow along with the chat or you can add your own comments. For question and answer times, please note the question and answer boxes on the menu bar. Please only submit your questions there as they will get lost in chat. To ask a question or make a comment, you can also select the hand option on the menu that allows us to know that you have a question. And for those of you on the phone today, we ask that you press *9 on your keypad to raise your hand, then you'll be unmuted to talk. And remember, if you join into the conversation, please keep all background noise down as much as possible. That will allow us to hear you clearly. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my longtime friend, Joan Labelle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited about this particular session. We think it's going to be a lot of fun to really see get a visual of the IL history through the ages and through the generations. So I'm just going to take a quick moment to introduce the panelists. We have our baby boomers, and I'll have you guys wave, and you can say where you're from. David is one of our baby boomers. David, do you want to say where you're from?
Sure. Good morning. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And the other baby boomer is Patricia. Patricia, you want to say hello and say where you're from?
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Patricia Yeager, and I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I'm the CEO of the Independence Center.
And then we have our Gen Xers. First one is Ian. Ian, you want to?
Hi, Ian Engel from here in the mountains of Colorado, Northwest Colorado.
And again, I'm Joan, and I am Executive Director of Disabled Resource Services in Fort Collins. And the room we're in right now is called our Zoom room in our Loveland office. So then we have our Millennials. We have Leo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Leo. I'm from Sonoma County.
And Evan.
Hello, I'm Evan. I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado.
And representing the whole entire Gen Y is
Z.
Andrew.
Z.
Z, sorry. No, Andrew corrected us before, so he'll correct us again.
Hi,
And-
I'm from Steamboat Springs, Colorado.
Okay.
And I am currently filming in my own little Zoom room.
Nice, nice. And so I'm going to turn it over to Peter. He can say hi. He is, as they said in the program, the voice. He's not on screen. He's just going to be our host and asking us questions. Peter?
Hi, everybody. This is Peter Pike. I work for the Office of Independent Living here in Colorado. And thank you all for joining Independent Living Through the Generations. We're very excited to have this panel of generations from Generation Z, Gen Z, all the way up through the boomers. So thank you for participating. Prior to us getting started here, I just wanted to remind folks that we had a meeting last week and you all agreed to the rules and how to respond to each of these questions. You'll have 90 seconds. And we will cut you off after 90 seconds. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say and sharing your experiences. So we do have 4 questions we're going to pose to the panelists today. And we're going to start with the first question. And so I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to call on the generation to respond to the question. The first question is, what were the significant independent living accomplishments in your generation? And we're going to go ahead and start with the boomers. And David, I would appreciate it if you would start us off.
Thank you, Peter. I would say that some of the significant accomplishments included deinstitutionalization, certainly the rise of the self-advocacy movement with organizations like People First, the civil rights movement. Ed Roberts introduced himself to the University of California, Berkeley, and that started a whole new journey for him as well. So those are the highlights that come to my mind. I hope that was within 90 seconds.
Very good. Thank you, David. Next, we're going to go to Patricia.
Patricia, you're muted.
Yeah, there we go. I think the most important thing that happened during the boomers in the early days was the signing and the implementation of the rules for Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. That really laid the groundwork for everything that came forward. I was a new Disabled Student Services coordinator in Pittsburgh, and we didn't see anybody with a disability until that section was signed and people started to attend and be out on the streets for that matter. So that to me is the most critical thing that happened in the early boomer years.
Excellent. Thank you, Patricia. We're going to go next to our Generation Xers. And we're going to go to Joan.
I think we should work as a team.
Go ahead. We can do that.
I think, of course, some of the earliest recollections for that generation, I think, is a lot of the Centers for Independent Living were being born across the country. And so it wasn't just suddenly people with disabilities out in the street. We had a lot of great leaders that were out there paving the way for us. And I think Centers for Independent Living is what really comes to mind for me as some of the greatest things that started.
We talked about this in our preparation, that a lot of these accomplishments are shared across the generations. And that's part of the continuity that independent living and the consistency across generations that we wanted this whole panel discussion to capture. So I'm going to go ahead and mention the ADA because it was signed when I was right in the middle of my activity. And as well as that, the signing of the ADA, prior to that, we had a lot of work with the Gang of 19 here in Denver, chaining themselves to buses and shutting down the regional transportation department for a day. And there's a monument to the Gang of 19, which for those who don't know was 19 of the folks that Wade Blank helped escape from nursing homes, that most of whom had power chairs that chained themselves to the full-size buses right in front of the Denver State Capitol. And to this day, there's a monument on the State Capitol lawn to that. Also, the Olmstead decision was huge. And again, this is something we share, that it means different things across the different generations. The Olmstead, the signing of the Supreme Court rule upholding the most integrated setting mandate of Title II of the ADA that says we all have a right to live in our own home. If it doesn't cost more, which we've proven over and over again. And then I would say to build on the deinstitutionalization that was mentioned by my boomer forebearers, the deinstitutionalization during my time in Michigan, a bunch of people were let loose from the intermediate care facilities for the mentally retarded and the mental institutions and the nursing homes. And there wasn't enough groundwork laid for home and community-based services, long-term services and support. So a lot of people ended up in homeless shelters, jails, and on the street. And I'm getting the sign, so.
Excellent. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Xers. Next, we're going to hear from the Millennials, and we'll get started. We'll have Evan kick us off, and then we'll go to Leo.
So thinking about some of the biggest independent living accomplishments in my generation, tagging off of what Ian had said about continuity and it kind of transitioning through all of the generations, is the signing of the ADA in the early 90s. And also more recently and along that same time was the implementation of the Youth Leadership Forum that has started to sweep the nation, and just about every state has one of those. So I would say that was two of the biggest ones that stood out in my mind.
Excellent. Leo?
The biggest one that stands out for me would be the Capitol crawl. I saw a whole bunch of people in wheelchairs, walkers, everything, crawling up some stairs. And personally having to do that before, it's very nice to know that somebody before me has done that so that I could still do it.
Excellent. Thanks, Leo. Next, we're going to go to Gen Z. I think, Andrew, that means you.
Okay, so again, what I found, I may not understand this question, but some of the significant independent living and accomplishments, sorry, I can't talk today, in my generation, allowing disabled people to be in general education classes, the start of, STARS, which gives kids and adults the ability to enjoy activities such as cycling, skiing, and even wakeboarding, which I've done all of them. And the start of the NWCCI organization that helps people with disabilities find jobs and housing and helps them begin the steps towards being completely independent.
I did not pay him to say that. Nice job, Andrew.
Nailed it.
Andrew, that was terrific. We appreciate your response to the question. And we're going to move on to our second question. And we're not going to go in the same order. We're going to start with Gen Z, Andrew. And here's the question. Who are the independent leaders of your generation? And, you can share your favorite if you want.
Sure. In my generation, one of my favorite independent living leaders that I look up to the most is Mr. Craig Kennedy. Craig Kennedy was the ex-director of STARS, which is the Steamboat Adaptive Recreational Sports Program, who a few years ago, I don't know exactly when, I want to say like 10 or 15 years ago, he hurt his back skiing. He went skiing and I guess he hit the ground too hard and he broke his spine. I've looked up to him because he honestly helped me kind of. He honestly at the very beginning when I first walked into stores, he helped me like get on my feet and make me feel important, like I had a voice in the disabled community.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing, Andrew. Next, we're going to come back to the millennials. And we're going to go ahead and start with Leo this time. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
So the question are, who are the independent living leaders of your generation? And if you want to share your favorite, we'd love to hear it.
So I'm not so well aware of the leaders from my generation, but at least for my favorite organization would have to be BOEC, which stands for Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center. And those guys help everybody get back out to whatever they love. Hiking, biking, sports, whatever it is, they got the tools to help you as long as you're willing to go.
Excellent. Thank you, Leo. Evan, you want to go?
Yeah. So my leader kind of tags off a little bit of what Andrew had said and a little bit what Leo has mentioned, but mine comes from the Youth Independent Living Specialist, who taught me everything I know, I would say, or at least, let me rediscover that I had empowerment inside of me to change and everything like that. So I would say that it would have to be the youth specialist at my local center. She was just a couple of years older than me, and it made a big impact on me.
I second that because she was my leader as well.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you. So next we're going to go to the Xers, and we're going to go ahead and get started with Ian.
Leaders of our generation. So one of my favorites is Wade Blank. I just like his style. Presbyterian minister that marched with Martin Luther King, got a job working as the youth coordinator on a nursing home, thought this is not right, started taking the kids out to the parks and the playgrounds, started taking the adults out to the bars and the strips clubs, got fired, started getting people out into their own homes. But the true leaders of my generation and what really sticks with me were your people who were stuck in the nursing homes, who were those soldiers at those adapt actions. I remember a guy named Ray Jolimar. I remember a woman named Sherry Ferris. First time ever coming out of an institution where they looked at it so helpless and pitiful, and now they were the vanguard of freedom, driving through the bigotry of low expectations and a part of this powerful movement for change. And it was those folks with the big 700-pound power chairs that were the most powerful part of the movement. So it was really kind of those unsung heroes for me that stick out the most.
Thanks, Ian. Joan?
I'm going to take mine from back in Michigan. There was a gentleman by the name of Dusty Hogue. Ian knows, and most people in Michigan in the disability rights movement knew Dusty. And he would describe his life before disability, thought it was going to be the end of the world once he got his disability, but turned into one of the greatest advocates, was part of the group that led many of the movements in Michigan in terms of he was always out front and always doing things. And so he is probably one of my big leaders that I really looked up to.
Thanks, Joan. Next, we're going to go to the boomer generation. Patricia, you want to start us off?
Let me get myself together here. For me, I think it's Judy Heumann. She, as a woman and as a leader, marching in the streets of Manhattan and all of the things that she did, I think she was truly a leader and a role model for all of us following behind her. I want to mention one other person who's one of my favorites. This is a shout out to California. That's Paul Longmore. Paul Longmore burned his book in front of Social Security because he was a professor at San Francisco State, I believe, yeah, San Francisco State. And he wrote a book, a history book, and Social Security threatened to take his Social Security away because of the royalties or whatever. But he staged a press conference in front of Social Security and burned his book. And he wrote a book about that. And he really started, I think, the whole movement around being able to work and being on benefits and bringing that together. And what a great story, burning your book in front of Social Security. So those are the kinds of personalities I think we had back in those days that were so much fun and laid the groundwork for all of us.
Excellent. Thank you for Patricia. And David?
I think that probably the leaders that I think of most readily in my generation, the most obvious being Ed Roberts. If it wasn't for Ed, he gave me my introduction to independent living. And, I had the pleasure of working with Ed for several years directly, and he became a mentor and a friend. And he taught me one very, very important thing, and that is that disability can make you very powerful. And, he lived by that credo. And I can't imagine an instance where anyone had the audacity to attempt to make a decision for Ed. He was very much in control of his life and made his decisions and lived those decisions as well. So he had a major, major influence on me. Again, he introduced me to independent living. He encouraged me to join the board of directors of my first Center for Independent Living, and where I eventually became executive director for almost 18 years. So he had a huge influence on me, and I think on the movement as a whole. I think there are other folks like Patrick Worth and Nancy Ward who's work with people first, had a significant parallel contribution to independent living, as did many of the leaders in the parent movement that used their experience as parents to encourage their sons and daughters with disabilities to be more independent and to make those kind of choices and live those kind of lives. Folks like Gunnar Dibwad and Betty Pendler and Dolores Norley and folks like that. But I think the most influential for me and my favorite from that era, if I should dare to pick a favorite, would be Ed. He just had an incredible influence.
Excellent. Thank you, David.
Yes,
it really is fascinating to hear the leaders of each generation. And thank you all for taking the time to share that. That was great. So we're going to move on with the third question. And the third question asks, describe accessibility in your generation. And this time we're going to go back to the boomers. And I'm going to go ahead and ask David, if you wouldn't mind to kick us off on the accessibility question.
Sure. Thank you very much, Peter. In terms of accessibility, I think I got to go back to Ed, because Ed gets the credit for the first curb cut in the United States being installed near his home in Oakland, in Berkeley, California. So we give him credit for the first curb cut, and that, obviously doesn't sound like much, but that's a huge element of accessibility. So I got to go back to him on that one. We also, in the result of the deinstitutionalization movement in the late 60s and through the 70s, we also saw the creation of a lot of community-based services that did not previously exist to support those individuals who were coming out of institutional and nursing home type settings. So that created a lot of access to community life and support services that really enabled individuals with disabilities to more fully realize a complete participation, or at least a fuller participation in their communities. So accessibility was in its early stages, I think. And I think one of the things that we learned in the deinstitutionalization movement also was that one of the biggest barriers to accessibility was not the physical barriers, it was the attitudinal barriers. And we really, really had to begin to fight and spend a lot of time addressing those attitudinal barriers, that pity that so many people with disabilities had to endure. And I think that was a big part of the challenge to accessibility in my generation.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Next, Patricia.
Building, I would have to agree that the curb cuts are the way it started. When we had curb cuts and doors that we could get out of and buses that we could get on and get across town, we started leaving our homes and going out into the community, which then forced people to start getting to know us as real people and not as these scary people that, you know, it might be contagious and you look different, you sound different. They had to get used to us. So when I started my career in 1979, there were no curb cuts in Pittsburgh or anywhere that I knew of. We didn't see people in wheelchairs in college, at the community college. We didn't see deaf people. We didn't see blind people. We might see a paraplegic. We sure didn't see a quad. And it was just, it was empty. I mean, we didn't see anybody. And it was a matter of getting those curb cuts and getting those buses accessible and fighting for building codes that mandated that buildings be built accessibly. Because once we could get out, when you build it, they will come. And I tell you, the next generations are going to talk about how they came out into the world and made a difference. So that's what I see.
Great, thank you for Patricia. And next we're going to go to the Generation X. And I'm going to ask the question one more time. And the question is, describe accessibility in your generation. So Joan, go ahead.
So it's interesting even to listen to some of the answers of the question, especially like with Andrew and the recreation, because that's one of mine. I acquired my disability back when I was age 5. I was a very active 1 to 4-year-old, and then my disease started happening. And thinking back to my neighborhood, the kids just kind of rally around you as a natural kind of conduit. There wasn't curb cuts, so they'd have to help me take that one step. If they didn't help me, I'd be down on the ground. And so from there, even to the point of, I remember in 1st grade playing in the back, and we played Red Rover. The young generation might not know what Red Rover is, but we played that. And half the fun, if you know what it is you link arms and you call someone over from the other team and they pull you across. Well, the kids would just drop their hands so that I could still play both ways. They naturally figured out how to do that. The kicker came in is an adult saw it and freaked out, and Joan never played in the playground again because they were afraid of falling, they were afraid of the vulnerability, they were afraid of everything like that. But the kids knew what to do. And the accessibility, sorry, David, I'm saying it wrong. the way that they viewed us was very different than now, where I know that Ian does belly yakking, which, is terrifying if you think about going down rapids on a belly yak, but it's evolved in that kind of respect that we actually want kids to participate in recreation, whereas back when I was growing up, that really wasn't the case. They wanted to protect us.
Thanks, Joan. Ian?
Peter, before you jump over to Ian, I've been asked to interrupt just briefly to let you know that the folks that are managing this session are aware that some viewers are having some technical problems, and they wanted us to acknowledge that they're aware that there are technical problems and that they are in fact working on it. So pardon my interruption. And Ian, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. I would like to build on accessibility in our generation, my generation. Building on this thing, going from the physical accessibility, curb cuts being sort of the example. There was some inadvertent consequences where there's like this hierarchy that was created, right? So Patricia mentioned you might see a paraplegic out once in a while. We're talking about getting out into sports and stuff. And David mentioned people first. And I'm glad he brings that up, because for me, it is those attitudinal barriers that really started to show their ugly face as the barriers to access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for people with disabilities within my generation. And that was my big aha through the movement. So things like learned helplessness, the right to fail, and disability pride. Why try to fit in when we were made to stand out, right? these concepts of, if you find yourself sitting at a table with a bunch of clinical professionals talking about your friend in the third person right in front of them, you might want to let them know that's rude. And let's practice some common courtesy here. And let's respect each other's humanity. So accessibility and that disability pride thing is really kind of what accessibility started to look like as I went through the movement with my generation.
Thank
Great
you, Ian.
point. Great points.
Excellent. So next, we're going to go to the millennials. And by the way, when I look in the chat, there's a lot of millennials out there rooting for you. So it's good to see how you're resonating with the audience. So we'll go to Evan. And let me know if you want me to repeat the question or if you're good to go.
No, I'm fine to go. So when I think about accessibility, in my generation, it does, as you've seen the theme, it plays off of what you've heard from the two previous generations, is that we took all of the work that they did, and now it is almost to a mandatory type of situation where things have to be accessible. And restaurants, you see that more and more, that there is accessibility, and if not, they have some sort of portable ramp that they can bring in and to get the person in and make it accessible. So I just think that the level at which all of that has been taken and how adamant we are about getting that accessibility has just grown even more in our generation.
Thanks, Evan. Leo?
I think accessibility has grown in our generation by leaps and bounds. My wheelchair can go so many places that other people's wheelchairs wouldn't be able to. My prosthetic leg is 1,000 times better than somebody back in their day, so ours is going by leaps and bounds.
Thank you, Leo.
Good point.
And then, of course, we want to hear from Generation Z. Andrew, are you ready for this question?
Yeah, this question was a little difficult for me, so I hope I don't get blasted on the internet for this for my answer to this question. Accessibility for me, David. The problems that my generation have towards accessibility might be the same as the other generations, but we have improved on those problems regarding accessibility and acceptance in the disabled community, because like Evan, I think, said about the ramps and being in restaurants. I mean, we do have those, but I mean, I go to restaurants all the time and I see they're all ramps, but they're usually in the back of the restaurant. So, I mean, yes, it is mandatory, but it's not much like, it's like they're helping with our community, but in the same sense, they're like going back to like where being disabled was illegal and not allowed in society. So it's kind of like in the middle.
Good point, Andrew. Thanks very much for that perspective.
Cripples use the back door.
So we're going to go ahead to question number 4. And I will make the note that in the chat, people were commenting about technology as part of accessibility. So thanks for that comment and feedback. So question number 4, and I'm going to start again with Generation Z, Andrew. Question 4 is, describe how people with disabilities are described in your generation. So Andrew, you want to start us off?
Sure. I'll start off. No problem. People in my generation view disabled people as just people, not people with mental problems, being at like Down syndrome or autism, or people with physical problems such as cerebral palsy. Just sweet, lovable people. And today most people look for the passion in a disabled person, not for the problems in a disabled person. I mean, we do still have people calling the disabled C-word in broad daylight, but you know, we're making progress and people are looking for passion and not problems right now.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
We're going to move on to the Millennial Generation.
Do you have more, Andrew?
Nope, I'm all good.
Okay, nice job.
All good. We're talking right now.
So Andrew, just so you know, there are people in chat that are echoing what you say and appreciate your point of view. So thank you for that, Andrew. And so next, we're going to go to Generation Y. I know people are like, what? Generation Y? That's the Millennials, right?
That's awesome.
You guys get two names.
Exactly.
That's
Lucky
pretty
us.
awesome. So who wants to go?
I'll go.
All right.
So I would consider my generation to be lucky, and I would assume that most of other generations would consider us lucky as well. Like I said, and some of you, even you said, we got great technology that helps us out. If it weren't for my wheelchair, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to push myself around just like Ian does. And if it weren't for my prosthetic, I wouldn't be able to get up from my chair or anything and transfer it as easily as I could. So I consider us very lucky and still pushing to keep on fighting.
Excellent. Thank you, Leo. Evan?
Yeah, so I definitely agree that we are definitely lucky in the generation that we grew up in to have all of the work from the previous generations before us. But I feel also that because we have dealt with all of the aspects that come with being disabled, that we are also just as progressive and trying to create change and keep it going and keep the disability pride alive and everything like that. So I think of our progressiveness, and some people may mention that we're a little stubborn, but I think that stubbornness brings change as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Evan. And I know some folks are writing in comments and questions, and we're going to get to questions in a little bit, but we want to complete the discussion with the panel, and then we'll hopefully have some time for some questions from the audience. And so next is Generation X, and I'm going to ask Ian to go ahead and respond to this question.
How people with disabilities are described in Generation X. I know Peter was saying we're like the lost generation. So I think we have a bit of a chip on our shoulder because we're like, hey, here we are. I feel like in some ways we're kind of, and part of it is just through this discussion has really helped me realize, at least for my own part in my journey, a bit of an aha generation where, you know, I came into it thinking it was all about curb cuts and physical accessibility, and I'm coming out the other end learning a lot about attitudinal barriers and disability pride. So yeah, I'm going to call it the aha generation.
Thanks, Ian. Joan?
Well, I think when I think in terms of how we were described, it had kind of a, we're still on the cusp of being that, being that paternalistic kind of thing, taking care of, putting, pat them on the head. Handicap was the new word that was supposed to be the up and coming word from what it was before. So that's kind of what I recall then, but I didn't get a lot of that when I was growing, more so in college, ironically, and when I was growing up, I didn't get a lot of that in rural America, but it was more so when you go to college, all of a sudden you realize how you're actually described and how you're talked like you're not even in the room and when you're in the room. So those are a lot of the things that started happening when we talk about nothing about us without us. There was a lot of that in our generation because we started refusing to be talked about when we're right there in front of them and not be relegated to the back anymore.
Thanks, Joan. Next, we're going to go to the Boomer generation. David, do you want to respond first?
Sure. Thank you, Peter. I want to go back to Andrew for a moment as well, because I really want to applaud his response about passion, not problems. That's a wonderful little catchphrase there, Andrew, and I appreciate the attitude behind it. I think it's fantastic. And I think a lot of that, what we saw in my generation was not particularly great. I think originally there was a lot of disparagement in terms of addressing or describing people with disabilities. I think there was it was pretty dismissive in context, and it was meant to create separation, and it was very successful at creating that separation. So a lot of work had to be done, not just in the IL movement, but certainly in the self-advocacy movement and in promoting concepts like person-centeredness. You know, we think about Marcia Force and Jack Pierpoint and Ms. Snow and the work that they did in promoting that person-centered approach. And it not only began to allow us to address some of those attitudinal barriers that Ian and I have talked about, but it also allowed us to start addressing some of the language issues and how we discuss people with disabilities, how we interact with people with disabilities, how we describe individuals with disabilities in a more respectful and people first fashion. And so I think, you know, I think my generation was experienced something very pivotal in that in the mid to late 50s, you know, as we began to move into the deinstitutionalization movement in the 60s, it began to change our language. It began to change how we describe people with disabilities, because as Ian noted, we were seeing people with disabilities differently than we had seen them before, in locations where we were not typical to seeing them. So I think there were a lot of things that really contributed to those descriptors.
Thank you, David. Next, we're going to go to Patricia.
Well, I think the medical model was in full bloom in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We called the handicap spots. Handicap was a big word. The R word was prevalent. No one thought twice about using that language. And it was all about those people, you know, X, Y, and Z, those people. And I can remember clearly when somebody, and I do not know where it started, said, well, the People First movement said we need to start saying people, then the disability. You know, people who are hearing impaired, people who are deaf, people who are wheelchair users. But how important it was and what a habit it was to break from the disabled, the handicapped, to people who live with disabilities. It was quite a change in our behavior. And we had to do it first. All of us in the independent living movement, in the disability movement, we had to do this change ourselves first before we could get other people to do it. And I remember that was quite an effort and worth it, very much worth it.
Thank you, Patricia. And there are a number of folks in chat that are resonating with what you said, including comments about jokes and things like that. So thank you for that. We do have a question I wanted to get to in that somebody posed, and I don't know, I'm gonna ask for help. I'll read the question, and I'm not sure how they can respond, but they said, can I comment on this question? How people view disabled people? So when you respond or comment, we want to know what generation you represent, and we'd love to hear you, hear your comment.
Is there a way to
Unmute people.
to unmute the participants so that they can participate at this time for the remainder of the workshop?
There absolutely is. This is Sarah Ann. So if a participant wants to be unmuted, they would have to raise their hand and I can unmute them each individually.
Can you see who wrote the question?
All right, while we're waiting for that to unfold, I do see that people in chat talked about having to teach their friends in 5th grade not to say things person first makes a big difference. And so I want to just pause here for a moment to see if the person who asked to make the comment is able to do that now.
And I'm not sure who made the comment, but we do have two people who are raising their hands, and I've unmuted the first one, who is it Adriana?
Ariana, yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. So, hi, my name's Ariana. I represent Generation Z, and I kind of wanted to respond on this. So, I'm partially blind and partially deaf, and like, although people are mostly accepting about disabilities, I do kind of run into blind jokes sometimes, and like, sometimes I also I'm nervous.
You're doing good.
Thanks. But I mean, for the most part, I do agree with Andrew that like people are really accepting and they don't use like the R word anymore or other nasty comments like that, but there still are jokes that come around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ariana.
Yeah, Andrew needs a little support with you Gen Zers. He's the only one on the panel trying to pull that whole generation. So thanks, Ariana.
Yeah,
Peter,
I'm
this
having-
is Sidna. I hate to interrupt. Peter, this is Sidna. There are two questions over in the Q&A, not the chat, but the Q&A, if you want to address those.
Yeah, so one of the questions is from Marilyn, and she asks, can the panel talk about how the media contributed to these stereotyped ways of describing people with disabilities? So I'm just gonna, because I haven't done this, I'm gonna ask to start off with Generation X. Do you guys want to comment to that question?
Yes.
Give him a time frame.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, as we agreed upon prior to this,
I'll
you're
go
gonna
fast.
have
Don't
30
take up my time.
seconds
Tell me how much
or
time I have.
less
Okay.
to respond to
30
this
seconds or less.
question.
The media likes things sensational. So if you can cast people with disabilities as pitiful and helpless and sorry and needy, and then you, I don't know if anybody knows about Billy Golfus when Billy broke his head and the do-gooder syndrome, and then the next thing you know, you got people helping folks because it makes me feel good because I can help the poor, disabled, or the immigrants, or the elderly, or whatever, and it separates us from our own humanity in this really ugly and twisted way. So I feel like the media doesn't always do that, and we've had some good media coverage. There's solid media coverage in the past, so I don't want to cast it all as one or all as the other. There is a danger, there's a pitfall when you get into that sensational area where it starts to separate us from our own humanity and play on that us and them thing. That's terrible.
Great, thanks. So do the millennials want to respond to that comment?
Do it as a team.
Sure.
So I just lost the question.
The media, how does the media
Right.
play into the stereotypes and stuff?
I mean, I feel like the media, at least for us, is kind of doing a good job, but not really. I mean, for them, to me, the media just wants the bad news. They don't want to cover the good news. Reason why I don't really watch the news is because everything is always bad. But like Ian said, there is that media where they do show us at our highest and how we continue to grow by still using the technology that somebody made up for some weird reason. And now we're using it to get our word across. So in a way it is good, but in a way it is bad because then they do describe us in a certain way when we could be describing ourselves as a different way.
Great, thanks, Leo.
I'd like to just add on to that, the fact our generation seeing the implementation of the internet has really made it very hard to discern what is true and what is not. And I think that is one of the hardest things that our generation has to deal with is making sure you do your own research and just not believing the first thing that comes out there, because there is so much out there that it is hard to understand what is right and wrong.
Great, thanks, Evan. Andrew, did you want to respond to the question about the media and how it portrays people with disabilities?
Sure. I mean, the media sometimes does portray people with disabilities as people who are not mentally or physically well, and I'm not exactly I'm having trouble kind of understanding the question. I'm not for people, bashing the disabled communities, but I am here for the I am here for the praise regarding people like saying that disability people are the best. When I see memes on like Instagram saying that and calling people retarded just because they don't understand a question, I'm sorry, I just said that.
You said it in context.
I will. I'm sorry, I just said the R word there.
It's all right. You're in safe space, Andrew.
It just when people say that in like a meme on Instagram, it just makes me really upset because I'm like, I don't call people like that at all. So I may not have understood the question, but that's my piece on it, and I hope I don't become a meme on Instagram.
Now your passion comes through, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. That was great. And then I want to just pose the question to David and Patricia. If one of you want to respond to your views on the media, that would be great.
Well, thank you, Peter. I would start by saying that the media, like a lot of other professions, requires a constant tutorial from us. We're not well represented. People with disabilities are not well represented in the media. So they have a very difficult time describing people with disabilities or talking about people with disabilities or presenting stories about people with disabilities, sometimes in a proper light. And I think even when they do strive to do it in the proper light, it comes off a lot of times as sounding somewhat condescending or patronizing, if you will. And I think that's a real danger. And I think that two things that need to happen are those constant tutorials. We have to reach out to those media outlets whenever we see or hear something that is inaccurate, inappropriate, does not describe the community in an appropriate way. And I think number two, we need to infiltrate. We need to see more people with disabilities working in media outlets so that we can bring our community to them. So that would be my top of mind thoughts. And Andrew, don't worry about, you used the word in context, Andrew, so don't worry about it. You're doing great.
Okay, can I add something to that? I'm sorry. I am like the millennial part two. I'm on my phone a lot. So I portrayed people in the media as like people as like memes on Instagram, which I don't know why that came into my head. But but also regarding TV, I really don't see a lot of disabled characters on TV. And even though I see some people like in wheelchairs, just like how my fellow panelist David here has a pet peeve on saying accessibility versus accessibility, my pet peeve for that is seeing able-bodied actors and actresses play people who are disabled. It just makes it makes me turn into Ghost Rider, basically. It makes my head catch on fire.
Bravo, Andrew. Bravo, bravo, bravo.
Thank you.
So
Thank
glad
you,
mentioned
Andrew.
that.
Yes, good point. And thank you all. I want to take a moment and just thank all the panelists, all the generations in front of you for coming together and having this discussion. And before we conclude, I wanted to bring it back to Joan and see if there's anything you want to do to sort of wrap up.
Well, when this first came out, I started joking a little bit with the April crew, Sierra and Mary, that we'd love to do this again next year live, because we have a whole host of ideas for an hour and a half. Because an hour really, I think that everybody wants to chime in, and I think having it for a longer period of time, but live, will give us a little bit of creativity. So I'm warning Mary that this is already going to be one of the sessions I'm going to put in for next year. Just giving you a heads up. I think it's really helpful for all of us to see where we've come from to where we are, and we still need to keep growing and going on from there. I have family in Canada, and whenever I go, I like to go to the sills that are there, and I went to the one in Ottawa where my uncle is, and this was back, the ADA had been around for about 10, 15 years, and I was bemoaning it and talking about, oh, there's just been so little change, and we're still struggling, and we're doing this, and he was a very quiet and gentle man, kind of sitting just like you are right now, David, and he looks at me, and he says very quietly, but at least you've got it. We can never hope to have all the places here come together to something like this. And so it really impacted me that we really do live in a place that we can make those changes, and we can be loud and proud in any generation that we are in.
Thanks, Joan. You know, I just will sort of bring it. There was a chat that said clapping emoji. So people have been very appreciative of this topic. And I just wanted to bring it back over to Sidna to see if there's any closing logistics we need to look at. I know we weren't able to get to all the questions in chat, but we are close on time here. Sidna?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. You're right. We have a lot of questions in there that we weren't able to get to. I do want to apologize for the technical issues that we were having, but it did get fixed, and it'll be fixed for all the sessions going forward. If you were having problems viewing the ASL portion of that, it will be in the recording on the website when this goes up. So you'll be able to go back and capture the first half that you missed. And we do apologize for that. There will be an evaluation for the session that's going to be put in chat. I believe Sarah will be putting that in chat for us. I do want to remind you to fill out that evaluation. And if you don't have time to do it right now, it'll also be on the website. But I want to remind you to do it not only for this session, but for all of the sessions going forward, because that does help us with the conference. So I appreciate everybody on the panel. Is there any parting words, Peter?
Yeah, Sidna, I just have a quick question. How many people participated? I couldn't tell on our end.
I show 135.
The highest number I saw was 141.
Nice.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for the time. And then can we get a copy of the chat? Because I didn't get to see that from here either. Is there some way we could capture all this? I see them pop up, and it's such nice things. Just
And Sidna, I just want you to know we're all drooling over your log cabin house over there.
Oh. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, thanks, guys, and I will work on getting this chat saved for us. Or maybe Sarah needs to do that.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
everybody.
Stay safe.
Thanks, everybody.